everybody, and welcome to Living Manna. Hi, guys. I'm Dave Sane, Senior Shepherd here at LMC. It's Wednesday night. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. It's, of course, time for Bible study for us. It feels like we haven't been here in a minute. It's been a couple of weeks at least. And I wanted to make sure that we were here for tonight. Still not 100%, still dealing with a little bit of a cold, and it's kind of going around with everybody. But I had to be here for tonight. I wanted to do a study. Let me just go through a couple of commercials before we jump into this tonight. If this is the first time that you're hanging out with us, thank you, first of all, for listening. Make sure that you give us a thumbs up, a subscribe. If you enjoy this message, you want to send it out to other people, we would appreciate that. Give a share the link with somebody. It's going to be a neat study for today. Now, normally, what I originally had planned is we were just going to continue with what we had started a few weeks ago, which was, of course, Daniel's 70 weeks. And we're going to get back to it. Promise you we're going to get back to it. Got lots of great information to share with you guys. But as the day went on today, I thought, you know what? Let's throw a little curveball in there and change the order up a little bit. And so for tonight, our study for tonight is going to be entitled "The Truth of Messiah's Birth." I know, appropriate, obviously, in the season that is around us. The world around us, of course, is celebrating the holiday of Christmas tonight. Of course, being Christmas Eve for those that celebrate it. And of course, and listen, on the one hand, on the one hand, there's a part of me because I'm trying to find a silver lining to this whole thing. On the one hand, there is that part of me that's like, well, I'm at least pleased that people are thinking about Messiah, which is a good thing. It's an absolutely good thing that at least people's minds are somewhat pointed towards Elohim. And crazy stuff obviously is happening around the world against even the thought of Messiah and the celebrations that are going on. But there's the other part that's like, well, wait a second. Then we haven't done this in a while. For those who've been part of LMC, we talked about Christmas and its origin and where it comes from and all of that stuff many years ago. We talked about it for a while, so I really haven't gone back to it in a while. So I thought that tonight we would do that, but again, like we normally do, from a little bit different perspective, and put the story in order, and help us to be able to understand it. And for those that are listening, so I'm hoping that people would see this, they'll see the thumbnail up there. They say, "Hey, I want to talk. I want the Christmas story. Let me get the Christmas story," and turn on to what we're doing, and all of a sudden realize, wait a minute, this is a very different story than what we were told or what is going on all around us. Of course, there it is, the truth of Messiah's birth. Let's open up with a word of prayer and we'll jump right into this for tonight. Abba, we love you. We give you thanks. We ask for eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart that's willing to obey. In the Master's name, amen. All right. So, like I said, let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see that there. All right, the truth of Messiah's birth. Like I said, I'm trying to find a silver lining here. At least we can talk about the story. Yeah, and we talk about the story throughout the year, but it seems like at least some people's hearts are more open to hopefully listen to the story. But the story that the world around us is getting is not actually the story. And we need to be really careful. Now, again, for those that have been watching us for a while, those that are part of LMC, like I said, we've talked about this many years ago. And so it might be a little bit of review for you guys. And tonight's not really about the pagan part, though that needs to be mentioned. Here is just some images that certainly this week, today, tomorrow, they're plastered all over our TVs. The music is playing on our radios and in your iPads and iPhones, and everybody's listening to Mariah Carey and all that other stuff. And of course, people have got their Christmas trees up and their Christmas wreaths and their Yule logs and the fires going, and they've got Santa Claus and reindeer, and they've got certainly a nativity scene in front of the Christmas tree. It's got the star on it, and all the balls are on top of it. And of course, there's the Christmas wreath, and then there's the mistletoe, and all of the other things that sort of make up this season, be it Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And it is kind of tough, in the beginning, as we first started really learning about truth. it's hard because a lot of the best memories that you have as a child growing up, even family memories, very often surround this time of year because this is a time when people certainly are getting together. I don't know if you'd call it a time of good cheer. If you've ever gone shopping during the season, you know people are not all about good cheer, but certainly there are memories that are part of who we are, and so there's a sympathetic part of us to this, and yet we also at some point we began to understand truth and had a desire to want to walk after the Elohim of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And certainly one of those things means to learn truth, to learn what it really says, as opposed to whatever the tradition or teaching is that just happens to be with us today, or even what has been done historically. By historic, I'd say maybe the last 1,000 years. The word of Yah is really the only thing that we have to go by that can instruct us. So these are definitely all symbols that we are familiar with. They're part of this season. And yes, they all have a pagan origin. I know I've seen some videos out there, some people saying, well, no, Christmas is not pagan. Yes, it is. It is. All of its origin is it's a mishmash of multiple things, including a memorial of the birth of Messiah. So it's all sort of conglomerated together. And of course, you've got your secular people that do Christmas and it has no spirituality to it. Maybe you got spiritual people that do Christmas and there's no commercial to it. I don't know. But either way, the origins, the traditions, they absolutely have a pagan origin. But that's not really what tonight's about. I didn't want to get into a whole study of all the pagan background, except to say this, and you can see it on the notes there. Speaking of which, guys, the notes are available in the uh, in YouTube. You can download them. You can also get them on the app. If you're watching us on the app, you can download them so you can follow with me at all the different verses and stuff we've got tonight. And guys, don't forget, if you are watching, give us a shout out. Let us know where you're watching from. Give us a hi. Good to see you guys. But here, so number one question is December 25th the actual birthday of Messiah? And I think all of us would just absolutely at this point we'd all be like, no, of course not. It is not the birthday of Messiah. However, it does have a place in history that absolutely has a pagan origin. Here's just a couple, because honestly, if we did a study just on the pagan background of Christmas, that's a whole study all by itself. Again, we did it years and years and years ago. But some of the pagan winter celebrations of either different gods that were born, or that their tradition is they were born at that particular time, December 25th, somewhere in the winter solstice. Here's just a couple: pagan winter solstice and or slash gods, little gods birthdays. Sol Invictus is a big one, of course. Let me just, guys, is that a little bit better on the audio? Can you guys hear that a little bit better? If so, just give me a shout out there. Hopefully that's up high enough for everybody. All right, let me know, guys, in the comment section, because I'm not wearing headphones, so I can't hear anything. So just some basic 101 stuff. Sol Invictus, that's a big one, of course. That has to do with the Romans. That has to do with the whole the birthday to the unconquered sun. That's the Dies Natas Solas Invictus. After that, or another one, is Mithras. That's another one of those winter solstice, December 25th. Saturnalia is not necessarily a birthday celebration, but it is a winter celebration. Very often surrounding 12 days of Saturnalia, which of course you can definitely find in the whole mythology today, the 12 days of Christmas. There is the celebration of the birth of Horus, who is born to Osiris on December the 25th. Also, Dionysus, there is a celebration, the god of wine and ecstasy. And Addis, another one. And some of these really just have sort of overlay to each other. It's the way one group did it to a god that they called whatever, but it's very similar to another god in another place that was called whatever, all of them having to do with the sun. Addis, the next one is Addis, which is also Roman. It's the life, death, and rebirth of a god that's associated with Sybil, the goddess Sybil. The Yule celebration, kind of, I guess, maybe more adjacent to Saturnalia. It's a Norse or a Germanic people's celebration, and you guys can do your own study on this. There's plenty of great videos out there that you can listen to and download and get all the information as to what the origin of these things are. And you'll see if you do that, that basically the way that the world around us, and even we did it one time as well, the way that Christmas is memorialized and celebrated is really just a mishmash of all of these different cultures all put together. Now, from a Christian perspective, historical Christian perspective, and I've talked to people about this. I remember talking to one leader of a fellowship and mentioning to him that the origin of these things, and his response to me was, "Well, don't you believe in Christianization?" Christianization is the idea that, well, since we know who Messiah is, it's okay to take over pagan holidays. And instead of making them pagan because we've taken them over and we make Christ the center of those things, isn't that a good thing? And my initial and just almost immediate response to that is no, no, that's not a good thing. That's not what we're supposed to do. That is actually frowned upon in the scripture. In fact, we are told emphatically not to do that. But I think part of the problem, this whole idea of Christianization, of all of these different pagan rituals and traditions and holidays and festivals, is certainly the idea that, well, we're just taking them over and now they belong to us. We've Christianized them and now we're making them out for God. We're making them out for the Messiah. But unfortunately, um, and most of the church believes this. Most, not all, but most of the church realizes that Messiah is Elohim in the flesh, right? That's one of the big points of the whole Christmas story, that he is Emmanuel. He is God in the flesh. And that he is indeed, that is Messiah, not certainly the babe in the manger, but Messiah is the voice of Mount Sinai. He is the one that Moses came to at the burning bush. Now he's called the angel of Yah, the messenger of Yah. He is the one who goes before Israel, in whom Yod He Wav He's name is, the one who forgives sin, the one who you don't want to cross. Moses is told, but it is the angel of Yah that is the one that speaks to Moses, the one that speaks to the nation of Israel from Mount Sinai, the one who gives the commandments. That angel of the Lord, the angel of Yah, is the Mashiach. We call him Mashiach now, but in the days that Moses was writing, he was referred to as the angel of Yah. So if, in fact, the idea is, the belief is that he is the voice of Mount Sinai, he is the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that before Abraham was, he was, and he is the God of Mount Sinai who gives the commandments, the same Elohim who said this is up on your notes now, Exodus chapter 20 and verse 4 says, you do, now this is right out of the commandments. It's the first time the commandments are being spoken to all the people. And he goes through the first four commandments and he says, you do not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or that which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. And you do not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh, your Elohim, am a jealous El. Saying nothing can be before him, nothing can be connected to him, nothing can be looked at and worshiped and say that that is him. And he visits the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, who don't love him, who don't do what he said, because he's going to define what love is here. But he shows loving commitment to thousands. And I put it here in green. I'm going to highlight it or underline it here in pink. The Elohim from Mount Sinai, who said, to those who love me and guard my commandments. The Elohim who said that from Mount Sinai, the Elohim who spoke from the burning bush, is the same one who said these words in the Gospel of John, chapter 14 and verse 15. If you love me, you shall guard my commandments. See, here's the problem. If in the modern sort of religious way we say, yeah, he's Elohim, he's God in the flesh, he's the one who spoke at Mount Sinai, and he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He says, I am Yah, and I do not change. But then we say, yeah, but he changed everything. There's a problem with that. There's a real then he is not the God who doesn't change. Then he is the God who changes. And of course, I guess the workaround that a lot of people have in their mind is, well, we're not under the Torah, so we don't have to, none of that stuff applies. Not being under the Torah has nothing to do with whether you obey the commandments or not. It has to do with your position and how you gain righteousness before Elohim by faith, not by works. But it doesn't mean that we don't have to walk in righteousness and learn what righteousness is, because Elohim doesn't change. And he explained to us who he is, what he wants, what's found acceptable, what's not acceptable, all over the book. So the same one who said, to those who love me and guard my commandments, says, if you love me, you shall guard my commandments. And verse 23, Yeshua answered, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. He who does not love me does not guard my words. And here he tells us what happens, or what he does, to those who do not guard his words. He visits the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. That's what it means to not love him. To love him is to obey. To not love him is to, or to not obey is to hate him. And so he's telling us the very same thing here. He who does not love me does not guard my words. And the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father who sent me. It's so important for us to wrap our minds around this vital piece of information, that it's the same Elohim who speaks in both John and speaks in Exodus. It is Messiah in John. It is Messiah. It is the angel of Yah in Exodus. And if he is Yah, and he is, we've gone over this I don't know how many times, he does not change. So we got to be careful if we start changing him. And part of the whole thing here that it says about not changing, or what he desires, are that you can't use all of these symbols and things. And later on, as you read through the commandments, as he expounds on the commandments, he tells them plainly, you can't use stuff to worship me. Don't worship me the way the pagans do. Don't take what the pagans do and think that you can worship Elohim that way. He has created his own set of instructions and ways for us to think about him, to love him, to serve him, to do righteousness, and of course, through faith, to gain right standing before him through the Messiah, the living word of Elohim. So, bit of a conundrum for a lot of our Christian brethren who would say, well, yeah, I believe he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Or I believe that he does not change, but he doesn't mean all that stuff anymore. That doesn't apply. So now we can do X, Y, and Z. To me, there's a problem with that. That's very, very, not even very iffy. I think we're skating. I think we all were skating on thin ice. But again, this is not just about the pagan aspect of it. I want to understand what the actual story is, or really talk about today what the actual story really is. So, from the Elohim who does not change, let's listen to the words of the Master, as written down by the apostles, of the story of the birth of the Messiah, the truth of the story of the birth of Messiah. So we're going to pick this up in the Gospel of Luke, starting at chapter 2. So again, if you guys don't have the notes, download them. Sorry about that. Excuse me, guys. Luke chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 1. And I'm just going to use Luke, even though there's an account in Matthew. We're just going to use Luke for tonight. We'll talk about some of the other ones another time. But here's Luke chapter 2, because there's just not enough time to go through all of it. So we're going to do a portion of this, but a big enough portion, I hope that you guys will really start to get the picture here and be able to, even at this time of the year, maybe share some truth with some other people. Maybe set right some things that are, well, not really so right, and things that we got to be careful of when we're doing them, if indeed we realize who he is, that he is the God of Mount Sinai, and he is, of course, the God that dies on the cross. So Luke chapter 2, the story of the Messiah. It says, and it came to be in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus for all the world to be registered. This took place as a first registration while Quirinius was governor in Syria. And all were going to be registered, each one to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth to Judah, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. We would say Bethlehem. It's called Bethlehem because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Miriam, who was engaged to him. So we went over this past Shabbat, the whole idea that she's found to be with child before the actual marriage ceremony. Now they're engaged, which means they're betrothed. So technically she's his wife, but they haven't had the wedding banquet yet. They haven't gone through the final service yet. That's still to come. And that doesn't happen until after Messiah is born. They don't do anything until the actual birth comes. Then the wedding engagement. And we relayed that, listen to Shabbat's message, Saturday's message, how we relayed that, the story of Miriam and the birth of Messiah, to the story of heaven. The New Jerusalem gives birth to children, lots of children, before the wedding feast of the Lamb. So this is prophecy that we're reading here. So if you want more on that, go back and get last weekend's study. But let's move on from here. So she's pregnant, and it came to be that while they were there. So this is important. They already got there. They're already there. It's so, like a lot of times we see in the story. But let me read through it, and then we'll go back. We'll go on. It says, and it came to be that while they were there, the days were filled for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him up and laid him down in a feeding trough in a manger, because there was no room for them in a lodging place. Now, a couple of things that we normally think about or hear, or are part of the nativity scenes today, or the story as it has come down to us. A couple of things here. They're in Bethlehem, very, very important. Notice that it says that they were already there. It says, and it came to be that while they were there. So it's not like, the story that we see. There's no little drummer boy that's leading them, in the front. There's no talking donkey. There's no claymation, singing songs. There's a census has been called. And so everybody's going back to their familial place of origin. So it's not just Joseph and Mary, it's all of Joseph's family. It's everybody's families. They're going back to their place of origin. More than likely, they're going back to a house that belongs to his family, some part of his family. Maybe Elizabeth, maybe Zechariah. We don't know. We're not really given that much information, but they were there already. It's not like she was, 9 months pregnant during the travel, and as soon as she got there, boom, here comes the Messiah. No, it says they were there already. So people were making their journey. They got to where they were going, and while they were there, the days were filled for her to give birth. So now she comes to term, 9 months. And she gave birth to her firstborn son. So I know a lot of people, in the whole sort of religious world around us, there's this concept of Mary's perpetual virginity. No, Messiah was her first son, not her last, her first, and daughters even after that. And that's sort of implied even in the language here. And of course, we see this later on in the actual gospel accounts. So she gives birth to her firstborn son. And so what does she do? She wraps him up in swaddling clothes, which was absolutely traditional for that day. You would bathe the child, you'd put salt on them, you would wrap them in swaddling clothes to keep their limbs stretched out and keep them in that warm, cuddled position. And that would be natural for any child anywhere. But this isn't anywhere. This is Bethlehem. This is Bethlehem. Because of a census, but you're going to find out it's because of a lot more than that. And she lays him in a feeding trough, in a manger, is I guess the way most of our versions would see it. And she does this because there's no room for them in a lodging place. Now, some of the other versions you might read, it says there was no room for them in the inn. And of course, I'm being a bit facetious. If you look at the picture up there, you sort of get the picture in your mind that they're walking past the Holiday Inn and there's like this flashing light says no vacancy, no vacancy. So then they go to Motel 6, no vacancy. They go to whatever hotel that throughout all of Jerusalem and Bethlehem, the whole area, there's no hotels that can take them. There's just too many people. That's not the case. That is not what's going on here. There were no hotels, not like that. So that picture obviously is just me being a bit facetious, but I hope it drives home the point. That's not what's being said. I know that when we read it, it seems like that's what's being said, but that's not what's being said. What is being said? What really happened, and when did it actually happen? Well, let's take a look. Bethlehem. Bethlehem. The word Bethlehem or Betlechem means house of bread. That's its literal translation. Beit, house, lechem, bread. Beit Lechem. Bethlehem is a village about 2 miles out from Jerusalem, but it's a very, very special village and has a very, very special connotation to it in the first century and even before that and even after that for a while. It was the village where the sheep, the goats that were raised there were specifically raised to be used as sacrificial animals in the temple. Nowhere else, nowhere else in the land of Israel was this specifically done to raise up these animals, which were animals for sacrifice. So it's not that they are in Bethlehem just because there is a census, though that is absolutely true. I mean, yeah, obviously a census was called and everybody's going back to their to their place. I'm sure it's a census for taxes and you see and to know how much taxes you're supposed to be getting. But that's not really the reason why they're in Bethlehem. They're in Bethlehem because this is prophecy. Everything means something. They're there because they are in the place where all of the sacrificial lambs were born. Now, when we say sacrificial lamb, we're talking about the meat, the bread, the blood, the wine of Yah's dining table. So when you brought your animals to when you came to Jerusalem, what animals you bought there were from Bethlehem. When the high priest walks in on 4 days before Passover, on the 10th of the Aviv, and he walks in with the lamb of Elohim on a rope. Behind him is an entire flock of sheep. Well, where he's coming into Jerusalem from is from Bethlehem. He walks out to Bethlehem. The shepherds that are there have prepared all of the lambs. They've raised them up, all the yearlings. He now follows. They walk with him, and he walks as the Messiah, a symbol of the Messiah, back to Jerusalem with that lamb that's going to be the Passover lamb and all the other lambs that are going to be sold as the Passover lambs to people that people are going to eat at the Passover at the dinner table. This is, of course, now when he rides into or walks into Jerusalem, everybody's, they've got the palms and they're waving them and they're all happy. Well, this is when Messiah comes in ahead of that high priest. And of course, he receives all the praise on that day. And that's why they're all ticked off. Tell your disciples to be quiet. You shouldn't be doing this for you. But of course, that was the way it was supposed to be. So again, they're not in Bethlehem just because of the census. Yah's using the census, but this is Abba's will that's getting done. This is prophecy that's happening. They are in the place of the house of bread. So just to show you, this is a constant theme all the way through the scripture. Here's some of the words of Messiah to show you how prophetic this really is. Here's John chapter 6 and verse 32. It says, "Therefore Yahusha said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, Moshe did not give you the bread out of heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread out of heaven. For the bread of Elohim is he who comes down out of heaven and gives life to the world." Verse 35, skipping a couple of verses, it says, "And Yahusha said to them, I am the bread of life. Verse 54, he who eats my flesh and drinks my blood possesses everlasting life, and I shall raise him up in the last day. For my flesh is truly food, and my blood is truly drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood stays in me, and I in him. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father. So he who feeds on me shall live because of me. This is the bread which came down out of the heaven, not as our fathers ate the manna and died. So house of bread is not just a name. It's not just the birthplace of Joseph. It's all of those things. It's not just a census. This is prophecy. And this is telling us the one who is the bread of life is born where? In Beit Lechem. The one who is the lamb, the food, the meat, the drink is born where? In Beit Lechem. This is just Abba's way of highlighting truth to us so that as we read the story, we can get a deeper look at it with, if we've got eyes to see and ears to hear. Okay, so with that, let's go on. It says that there's no room for them in the inn. Of course, you remember the last picture; they're standing there, and of course, it's the Holiday Inn, no vacancy. No, that's not what's happening here. I want you to realize something. When it says no room at the inn, it's really, I guess it's an unfortunate translation, the way that we've received it in the Greek, because to us, in our modern way of thinking, we're thinking about hotels. And you go someplace, you go to a foreign place, or you're going back, and everybody's going to a big festival. You're going to go stay in a hotel. That's not what's happening here. You're going back to your family, to whatever land and homes you owed. So this idea of the inn, the word inn, is also the word upper room. And here is, I'm going to highlight this in yellow so you guys can see it. I'm right here. The word upper room, the word often translated as inn, I-N-N, in the Christmas story is the word kataluma, which more accurately means a guest room or upper room. In a larger family home, this would be a separate room on the roof or attached to the side for visitors. If this room was full, as is the case with Joseph and Mary, guests would stay in the main living area or even the lower level with the animals. Now, I want you to see the picture that's right next to it because it gives us a great example of this. This right here, this entire area is the upper room. Why is it called the upper room? Because this is the lower room right here. Now, the homes around Bethlehem in the first century made out of limestone. Some of them were actually built right into the limestone caves. And sometimes the bottom floor, that first floor, was actually the cave. And what the bottom floor was for the keeping of animals, whatever animals you wanted to keep out of the cold, normally some sheep, a donkey, whatever it was. They would be right there in front of you. And the people would be on the, let me get rid of some of these lines here. The people would be here in the upper room. Now, this shows it as an open roof up here during the summertime, and there was probably, more living space back here if you another adjacent room. During the summertime, what often wound up happening is, when you read this, of course, in when the master's talking about Matthew 24, those who were on the rooftop. Well, in the summertime, they actually slept up here on the roof because it was very, very hot. And of course, they would put boards across and put hay and all sorts of other things and palms to pat it down, and you would sleep outside with the stars above you because it was cooler than being inside the house. This is the upper room. Of course, it's the upper room as opposed to the lower room, which is here. And we're only talking, it's not, first and second floor, 10, 15 feet up like we have today. It's 2-3 feet, but it's an upper room. This is real important for us to understand because we see these verses later and we don't really wrap our mind around what's actually happening. Here's Acts chapter 1 and verse 13. It says, and when they came in, they went into the upper room where they were staying, both Kepha and Jacob. And when you read it, it goes through all the apostles that are there. Everybody's there. The 120, all those people are in. So this is a big upper room that they're in. This is in the Essene quarter of Jerusalem, the same place where they have the Passover dinner, the upper room. It's not second story the way we would think. It's just an elevated room as opposed to the first floor where you would keep the livestock, the animals, whatever it is, some cold storage, whatever things you had. And then chapter 2 of the book of Acts says, and when the day of the festival of Shavuot had come, they were all with one mind in one place. Well, where were they? They were in the upper room, not in the temple. This doesn't occur in the temple, as there's a lot of people that teach that this didn't occur in the temple. This occurred in the Essene quarter of Jerusalem, in that upper room. That's where they were all gathered, and of course the Spirit comes down and tongues of fire and all the rest of that happens on the day of Shavuot, of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the, here it is, it filled all the house, not the temple. It filled the house. This didn't happen inside the temple proper. This happened in the upper room, the place of the Passover, and the place where, of course, they wrote in the new apostle. So that's what's being referred to here. So when we're reading in the gospel account of the birth of Messiah, and it says there was no room for them at the inn, this was more than likely a family home. And it wasn't just Joseph and Miriam who were there. There were other people as well. Again, maybe Elizabeth, maybe Zechariah, maybe some cousins, maybe some, distant relatives who still lived in Bethlehem. So the house was full. Why would it be full? Because everybody has to go back to their place of origin for the census, for however long the census is going to take. So what it's actually telling us is there were so many people in the house, in the upper room, in the inn, in the spare bedroom. You wouldn't be out on the roof because we're going to find out exactly when this is happening, but you wouldn't be out on the roof at this particular time. And no, it's not December 25th, but you wouldn't be out on the roof. So the only place that that extra room, and you ever have a whole bunch of family over your house, and you just got so many family, you got so many rooms, everybody just starts sleeping in the living room, on the couch. People roll up, a sleeping bag on the floor. The kids are sleeping on the floor. That's the situation that we have here. And there was not enough room for them in the inn. So it's down here where a manger, the feeding trough for the animals, is normally built right into it. It's all limestone. It's all brick. Well, not brick, but limestone, rock. And the animals would have been around. This is the picture that we don't get as we read the story, but this is really the picture of the story that we should get. Okay, I hope that clears up some stuff for us. That makes sense to you guys, gives you a little bit different perspective. So it's in Bethlehem. It's not at a Holiday Inn. It is in an upper room inside a family house that just has so many people in it. There's just no room for them, so they have to stay where the animals stay. Again, this is not abnormal. This would be normal, but it's part of the story. Okay, so here we go. Next slide here, guys. Luke chapter 2 and verse 8 goes on to say, and in that same country, there were shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And look, a messenger of Yahweh stood before them. This is not the messenger of Yahweh. This is a messenger of Yahweh, an angel, stood before them. Messenger can sometimes mean angel, can sometimes just mean a person, a man, an apostle, a disciple. It says, and look, a messenger of Yahweh stood before them, and the glory of Yahweh shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. And the messenger said to them, do not be afraid, for look, I bring you good news of great joy, which shall be to all people. The gospel is for all people. Because there was born to you today in the city of David a Savior, who is Mashiach, the Master. What we don't get, or what we don't realize, is this is Elohim, because there is no Savior except for Elohim. Elohim is the one who is Savior. And so when it says the Master, some of our other versions, when you read it, says Savior, who is Messiah, the Lord. We're talking about Elohim here. You're going to see that the angels, the um, uh, shepherds, they get it. They absolutely get it. And so I put this in blue here. I want this to pop out to you. This is the sign to you. Now, this is important because the angels are speaking specifically to the shepherds who work in Bethlehem and the surrounding area to raise specifically the animals for sacrifice. So they're working for the temple. I don't know. Do they have a connection to the Levites? Perhaps, probably. They're shepherds, though, but not like any other shepherds. These sheep are not like any other sheep in any other flock in any other place. They are raised specifically to the standard of the temple to be used for whatever sacrifices, from Passover to all the other things that need to get done. So he's telling these people in particular, the angel is speaking to these shepherds, and he's telling them, this is a sign to you. Let me say this another way, maybe a PDP version. You will recognize this sign. This is a sign that is specific to you. This means something to you shepherds in Bethlehem that maybe other people don't realize. Even we don't realize until, we go back and we start to look at some of the history. So this is a sign to you, to the temple shepherds. You shall find a baby wrapped up, that is wrapped up in swaddling clothes, lying in a feeding trough, the feeding trough of the animals, the lambs in a home, in a feeding trough. This is going to be a sign, a marker, but it's not just a sign. It is a sign to them specifically. Now, what you're looking at right next to it on this picture, this is a tower. I'm going to get the actual name for you so that, because it's on the next slide. It is called the Migdal. It's called the Migdal Eder. The Migdal Eder. I want to go back just so you can see it again. That's what this is here. This tower. It's really it's a tower, so you can get up on the tower and you can see all the flocks for a couple of miles. You can see Jerusalem all the way off in the back here. There's a city. Bethlehem is within a 2-mile radius of it. Jerusalem's a 2-mile radius of it. All the animals that are out there are all specific animals being raised specifically as sacrificial animals, meeting whatever the biblical standard is that these animals must meet to be used as a sacrifice. No, not one blemish, not one spot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, you can see the sheep that are out there sort of just grazing around. And so somebody would be up there, one of the shepherds would be up there, and they'd be looking and they could see all the flocks all around them and care for them and take care of them. So this sign of a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes is specifically for them. So why is it a specific sign just for them? This is from the Talmud, the Mishnah. Now, I'm not saying that we always have to go back to the Talmud and the Mishnah to get our information, because they don't really understand the whole idea of Messiah as it is. They don't realize who Mashiach really is. They're looking for a Mashiach that is not the Mashiach who actually came as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But there's a lot of great cultural and historical stuff that we can certainly glean out of there. So here's what the Mishnah Shekalim, I'm reading up here, guys. The Mishnah Shekalim, this is chapter 7 and verse 4, says about these particular shepherds. It says an animal that was, this is actually chapter 7, verse 4. It says an animal that was found between Jerusalem and the Migdal Eder, that is the tower of the flock, the thing we just saw beforehand, or within a similar distance in any direction, males are presumed to be burnt offerings, females are presumed to be peace offerings. So all of the animals, as you can see, that are allowed to be out there in the fields, they were specifically for this reason, as is recorded in the Mishnah, Shekalim, chapter 7, verse 4. It goes on in the Talmud in the Baba Kama 79b to 80a. It says the following about grazing restrictions in that area and in all of Israel, but in that area in particular. It says the Talmud records a prohibition against keeping small cattle. It doesn't mean, small cows. It means sheep and goats. Small cattle in the inhabited farmland of Israel to prevent them from destroying crops. So you weren't allowed in an area where wheat was growing or in a field to just let your sheep go out in there and graze because they'd eat everything. That would be considered illegal, wrong. You had to bring them into the wilderness, and that's exactly what it says here. They were supposed to be kept in the wilderness. But the only exception to this cultural rule was made for sheep destined for temple sacrifices. These sheep could be kept closer to the city, like in the fields of Bethlehem, throughout the year. So they were allowed to graze in all those open fields. There was no crops going on over there, but they were allowed to graze in those fields where other animals wouldn't be. And here's the real thing. The lambing season is in the springtime, the Aviv, the Abib. The lambing season, the ewes, I'm down here, guys, if you want to follow along, this should be on your notes as well. The ewes typically give birth in late winter or early spring between March and April. During this quote unquote lambing season, shepherds would stay out with the flock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At other parts of the year, they would not. They would sit in a tower. They sit in a tower and they look over it. But during the season, see, lambs are not, like us. We can have babies whenever we want. It depends on when conception is. 9 months later, whatever that month happens to be, boom, a baby pops out. That's not how lambs work. They wind up all mating at the same time and then all giving birth at the same time in the spring, in the Aviv, in the place where it is called the house of bread is the place where the sacrificial animals are cared for and reared to the temple sacrifice. And it is the place only in the springtime that the lambs are being born at the Aviv between March and April. During this lambing season, the shepherds would stay out with the flock 24/7. Newborn lambs are fragile and vulnerable to predators or to the cold because it's still, the ending of winter, beginning of spring. Nights are still very cold. Shepherds, those who are out there in the fields 24 hours a day, only during this season, shepherds had to be there the moment they were born to protect them. And what they would do is when the lambs were born, they would wrap the lambs in cloth, avoiding injury. Because it's a brand new lamb. If it falls, it could break itself. An animal could come and do damage to it. It's cold. It could shiver to death. So the shepherds would come and wrap these baby lambs born in the spring in these cloths to protect them so that they will not have spot or blemish. Now you can understand why the angel says this is a sign for you. This is something you guys will recognize. Why? Because what are they doing out in the field? Exactly this. They're doing exactly this. They are waiting for the baby lambs to be born in the Aviv. And those who were born the year before are because it's almost Passover time, because the Aviv is the beginning of the Passover season. It's springtime that this occurs, not the winter. This is the springtime that this occurs, not the winter. And this would be a sign specifically to them. They would recognize, because that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. So these angels appear. They say these words to them. These people, they're, I would imagine absolutely amazed. You can see on the picture there's the guy, and he's holding the lamb, the newborn lamb. And what's he doing? He's wrapping it in swaddling clothes. He's wrapping it up. and taking care of it so that it is a lamb without spot and blemish, and it can grow up and be part of the sacrificial system at another time. Okay, so with that, let's go to the next one. So this story is taking place just from a historical perspective. Some of the background information we've got. This is not taking place in winter. This is not just taking place in any place where lambs are grown or are taken care of. This is taking place at the house of bread. This is taking place in a family home of the house of David. This is taking place on not on the upper room, but on the lower floor, because all of the family is there. Everybody's there for the census. Plus, Passover is coming. So everybody's coming for that as well, which kind of makes sense if you're a Roman politician and you want to call a census in all of the world around you. The one time a year you don't call a census is in the middle of winter, because nobody's going to go travel in the middle of winter. You call it in the beginning of spring so people can get to where they are by the time spring hits. It's nice weather. You have time to take the census. You get an accurate count. You get your accurate taxes. That would be a good politician. So, this idea of December 25th has no bearing whatsoever. As we said before, with lots of other things on December 25th, we only mentioned a couple, but they have nothing to do with the actual story of the birth of the Messiah. So it's Passover season. It's the Aviv. This is not Christmas season. This is Aviv or Abib, Passover season, springtime. Here's chapter 2 and verse 12, Gospel of Luke. It says, "And this is the sign to you, to the shepherds. You shall find a baby wrapped up, lying in a feeding trough, a manger, and suddenly there was with the messenger a crowd of the heavenly host, praising Elohim and saying, 'Glory to Elohim in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased.' And it came to be, when the messengers had gone away from them into the heaven, that the shepherds said to each other, 'Indeed, let us go to Bethlehem and see this matter that has taken place, which the Master has made known to us, Elohim.' And they came in haste, and they found Miriam and Joseph, and the baby lying in a feeding trough for lambs. And having seen, they made known the matter which was spoken to them concerning the child. And all those who heard marveled at what the shepherds said to them." So these guys told everybody. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? When you realize what we just saw, we just experienced, and how they can identify with it because it's happening in accordance with their job. That is to be there waiting for the ewe lambs to give birth, and then to wrap them in swaddling clothes and protect them because they are the sacrificial animal of the future. That's exactly what they're going to see. The sacrificial animal of the future, who says he is the bread of life, he is the meat, he is the drink, that he is the one sent from heaven, that he is the bread, the Bethlehem. They're going to see that one. When? Not in December, not in the winter solstice. They're going there in the Passover, in the spring equinox, to see the sacrificial lamb born in the Abib. And you can see on the picture, just right next to it. Of course, it's nighttime now. So, and normally at this time, this is just a picture. You know, the roof would be covered because you want the warmth to stay in the house when you've got the fire going on. But you know, it's a picture. So, but you can see in the picture, you got the shepherds all around it. The one guy's holding the lamb, which that's all wrapped up in its own clothing. It's a brand new lamb, a brand new sacrificial lamb that was born that night. He's holding it, and of course, and there's the Mashiach in the manger, and of course you can see the sunlight or the moonlight, you know, sort of shining down. And the other family members are in the upper room. They're in that elevated floor just above it. So all of a sudden, I hope the story is starting to make a little bit more sense to everybody. This is the story of the birth of the Messiah. At least there's more and more. There's much more to it. We just only have but so much time to go over all of this. So, if indeed Messiah is the voice of the burning bush, the voice of Mount Sinai, the one who is the word of Elohim, and he says that I am Yah and I do not change. And he is the one that instructs us that for those who love him, they keep his commandments. And then Messiah comes and says the exact same thing. If he is that Elohim, then all that Elohim said beforehand is his word, and he does not change, including that we are not supposed to come to him with pagan symbols and pagan rituals and or Christianize things and make them about Messiah. Abba has already created his own system for us to think in and understand in, to understand the intricacies and the details. They understood what the sign was because it meant something to them according to the traditions that had already been established in the temple. That's how this thing works. We don't go out and co-opt other things and just, slap a Messiah sign on it and say, well, this is about Messiah. Here's Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 7, our last verse for today. It says, remember those leading you who spoke the word of Elohim to you. Consider the outcome of their behavior and imitate their belief. Listen to the people who told the story. Listen to the gospel writers. Listen to the preachers that came before. Listen to the shepherds, the bishops that came before, and imitate their belief. Verse 8. Yahushua, Messiah, is the same yesterday and today and forever. He doesn't change. He doesn't. This is exactly what Malachi says. I am Yah, and I do not change. Here we are. Here we are again. Same verse, same concept, same idea. It's telling us Messiah doesn't change. So whatever the belief was, imitate the belief of the things that you heard beforehand. Well, what do we hear so far? We heard it's Miriam who is with child of the Holy Spirit before the wedding feast. It is going back to the place of the birth of the house of David. It is no room, not in a hotel, so many family members. You got to basically sleep on the floor by where the sheep are. That's where the Messiah is born. In the place of the house of bread, the place where the food that comes to Yah's table is birthed only in the springtime, the place where the people who are in charge of it know that those lambs must be taken and swaddled and protected so that there is no blemish, no spot or wrinkle about them, that they can go to the temple. That is a sign that they would understand. They go to where the place is and they see the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, just like the lambs out in the field. That's what we got before. Consider the outcome of their behavior and imitate their belief. You know what we don't see here, guys? We don't see wreaths. We don't see mistletoe. We don't see elves. We don't see the North Pole. We don't see reindeer. We don't see a sleigh. We don't see Krampus. We don't even see gifts here. There's no gifts. There's certainly no tree with balls on it. None of that is here. There's no Yule tide. There's no 12 days. There's no carols. None of that is happening here. That is not the story that we received, that we are to imitate their belief. And the Messiah is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Do not be borne about by various and strange teachings, things that we have not been given, things that have been added later, things that have been co-opted from other groups and other traditions and other religions and other places and other cultures, and mishmash the whole thing and just put a stamp on it and say that it is for God. For it is good for the heart to be established by grace, by favor, not with foods which have not profited those who have been occupied with them, like the Pharisees. He's not talking about not eating clean. He's talking about all the food laws and the stuff, all the traditions that tampered down the word of Elohim. He's saying, don't do that. Don't follow that kind of stuff, and don't follow other teachings. We have a slaughter place, the place where you eat, from which those serving the tent have no authority to eat. We have Bethlehem, Beit Lakem, the house of bread, and the one who is the Lamb of Elohim. And of course, you can see the shepherds there in the picture looking up and seeing the angels. What a magnificent night this would have been. Now, of course, the story of the Magi is much, much later, probably around 2 years later before that actually occurs. So the actual story of the birth of Messiah is pretty much what we just went through. And it's important to realize what is there, and it's important to realize what isn't there. So while I am glad that a good portion of the world, at least their eyes are somewhat open to the story, which is wonderful, phenomenal, great, I'll take it, silver lining. It's an opportunity for us to share some truth with them and then share it throughout the entire year as well. And hopefully, just like we did, at some point, we open up our eyes and our ears, and these signs mean something to us. Beloved, that is the truth of Messiah's birth. And that is Yah's study for you guys for tonight. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I sincerely, sincerely appreciate it. Guys, have an awesome rest of the evening. If you're getting together with family and friends and you're having dinners and stuff like that, take the opportunity to, share some of this stuff, share some truth. If people are going to talk about the Christmas tree. Hey, let me tell you something about the Christmas tree. Obviously you don't want to get in a fight with anybody, but listen, take the opportunity to try to share some truth. Guys, in the meantime, have an awesome, awesome evening out there. Again, thanks so much. Join us on Friday night at 7:30 for our Hidden Manna. We will be here. Looking forward to it. Got some neat commandments, some odd ones out there that we would say, well, that really doesn't apply to us anymore. And you're going to find out they all apply. They all apply in some way. In some way, they're still there. Not one jot, not one tittle passes away till all has been fulfilled. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great night. Shalom. Peace.